Haney, you saw what a good moderator she is just a little while ago. She's going to do it again with a session on tech and nonprofit collaboration in a networked era with Heather Johnson of Ericsson and Enrica Porcari of the World Food Program. So let's hear another great panel moderated by Catherine.
So earlier we heard about some rifts in terms of divides between East Coast and West Coast. That came up in the session on ethics and responsibility in modern technology. And another huge rift that I often see in my reporting is between the tech sector and nonprofits. And it's a real shame because there's so much potential when partnerships do work. And I will say, in reporting that I do on the Sustainable Development Goals, which I think you're all familiar with, but a global agenda for the world to improve, to end poverty, promote gender equality, education, et cetera. Number 17 of those 17 Sustainable Development Goals is partnership. And I think we can all agree that none of these global challenges can be solved without partnership. And a partnership that often comes up is the partnership between the World Food Program and Ericsson. So I'm really glad to be able to talk about it. And what I've asked both Enrica and Heather to focus on is not just what they've done together, but how they've done it, challenges that they've had, and learnings for you all as you also consider partnerships in this realm. So just to briefly introduce our speakers, just next to me is Enrica Porcari. She's the Chief Information Officer and Director of Technology at the World Food Program, and also chair of the Emergency Telecommunications Cluster, which basically works on a lot of coordination post-disaster, and you'll hear about that. And Heather Johnson, to my right, is the Vice President for Sustainability and Corporate Responsibility at Ericsson, and she's a big believer in the importance of ICT post-disaster. I just want to quickly throw this out there. I don't know how familiar you all are with disaster response and the kinds of partnerships that are needed, but go back 15 years, and you would hear that food, water, and shelter were the immediate concerns, right? And these days, there's a new pillar, which is connectivity. Correct. And in fact, it's not just a fourth pillar, it's kind of foundational. If there is no connectivity, food, water, and shelter are not likely to come very quickly. And both of you partner to kind of make that happen. So can you tell us, it might be helpful to even zoom in on a particular response. I know you were recently recognized at the Mobile World Congress for your work in Dominica. Can you tell us about, not just what you do together, but how you partner, and what are some of the learnings for this group?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us here. I don't know, how many of you are familiar with the World Food Program?
Oh, great to see.
Wow, that's overwhelming. But there are some who haven't raised their hands. So for those who haven't raised their hands, the World Food Program is the largest humanitarian agency within the United Nations that operates to basically save lives and change lives. Every year we serve about 90 million people in many countries, some of the most difficult places in the world, you know, the Iraqs, the South Sudan, the Sudans, the Yemens of the world. And so it's important for us to really leverage technology to be able to do our work. And so we've been leveraging technology for a long time. As you mentioned, we also, as an organization, we chair the Emergency Telecom Clusters, which is a construct across all UN agencies, private sector, NGOs, to basically coordinate the work in emergency response. How do we coordinate our work so that when we go into these countries, we don't trip over each other? You know, how do we ensure that we stay efficient, that we stay effective, that we keep the beneficiaries at the center of our work? As I keep on saying, you know, responding to an emergency for humanitarians and for partners is not disaster tourism. You know, it takes a lot of commitment, it takes a lot of work, it's a profession.
I want to quickly narrow in on that because in terms of challenges, I think that's a big challenge you have.
Yeah.
Disaster tourism, you know, people hear that they're going to get to go to the field and help save lives, but there's actually a lot of work that leads up to that that's not quite so sexy, and that's where some really important partnership happens, right?
Correct. So we've had a lot of interest in partnering with the World Food Program and with the humanitarian agencies, but as I think that our relationship with Ericsson is a testament of, it takes work. Like all good partnership, all good relationships, it takes work, and it's about it's about understanding what the needs are, understanding where technology can be used to support the work that we do, not just dumping technology in a new environment, but really what problems are we trying to solve, who are we trying to connect, who are we trying to support, not only providing the, as you said, a basic pillar of connectivity where there is a growing 4 billion people now have access to the internet, which means another 4 billion don't. So, and this is where most of the countries where we operate. So how do we ensure that we can deploy appropriate technology to give them a voice? You know, not only to save lives, but to also to hopefully support in changing their lives.
Great. And Heather, can you expand on what Ericsson brings to the partnership, and also in terms of WFP as a partner? WFP is a UN agency, but not like every other UN agency, and perhaps easier to partner with than some other UN agencies. So can you expand on how do you partner and what makes the WFP partnership different, and how might others learn from that?
Absolutely. And to start, I mean, the program where we're collaborating the closest is called Ericsson Response. This was founded in the year 2000. It was a group of employees that really understood the power of connectivity, and at that time, we're talking about voice connectivity, and really wanted to find a way to channel that and contribute. And since 2000, we've been in over 40 missions, 30 countries together with WFP, where I think there is this success factor has been that, of course, what we bring to the partnership is technology expertise. What WFP brings to the partnership is their humanitarian expertise. But they have an openness, an understanding about the capabilities, also some of the limitations. There is a very good, realistic, robust discussion and collaboration around how we can provide solutions in these extreme contexts.
One thing I'd love to hear you talk about, in terms of what makes Ericsson a little bit different in how you partner, you are not based here in the US, and that actually changes your ability to partner. So can you expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. We're a Swedish company founded in 1876, and you know, because of the governance rules that we have, basically donations are an OPEX. So we were in a way sort of challenged to find ways that we were contributing through sort of more in kind, through technology expertise of our employees. And I think that that rigor has served us very well. I mean, there's certainly been ups and downs. I don't know how many of you have followed Ericsson's journey, but even in times of pretty sort of drastic you know, financial stress on the company, Ericsson Response remains a flagship. It is something that the entire company, no matter what CEO, is committed to. And I think that's a testament to the strength of that model.
So in a moment, I want to open it up to questions, so get those ready. But in terms of tech and nonprofit collaboration in a networked era, and I want to emphasize that in terms of why technology makes partnerships so critical and how technology also enables partnerships. I'd love to hear from each of you, if you could kind of complete the sentence. From the WFP perspective, I wish more companies would, and from the Ericsson perspective, I wish more nonprofits would, because for this audience, representing kind of both perspectives and everywhere in between, I think there could be some learning. So how would you complete that sentence?
Oh, okay. So I wish more companies would be willing to take partnerships at heart, take the value of what a partnership with an organization like the World Food Program or other non-for-profit could bring to the company itself, you know, and understand and co-create this shared value between the two. There is value for the people we serve directly as humanitarians, but there is also value for the companies that are willing to partner with us. There are a number of companies that really believe that, for example, there is a great incentive to attract and retain talents, because you're not only doing well, but you're doing good. And you know, and sometimes that is a great motivator for, and I know that for a number of Ericsson volunteers, that is really a moment of great pride. And I think that's, so I wish more companies would take some of the learnings from this experience and come forward and say, we want to continue doing well and doing good at the same time. And yeah,
Just to have you expand on that, it's essentially a recruitment tool and gets employees excited, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we have had people, it's actually in the context of the 100,000 employees that we have in the company, it's a rather small group, about 200 on rotation at any time. But just that core has such a ripple effect across the company. It is a reason, even if people don't participate themselves, they say that they joined Ericsson because of the program. But just to your question about what are we looking for in a partner as well, I think what we're looking for is a partner who, and I really have to commend WFP for having this understanding of technology and for really realizing the impact that it has, far greater, I mean, despite the situation that we have with the donations, but far greater than the impact of any donation I think that we could have made, is really to look for that, sort of co-creating that value, bringing our core competence.
No, I think this is really interesting, especially because being based here and writing about the role of Silicon Valley in global development, a lot of what I also cover is how nonprofits and groups working on the SDGs are trying to engage Silicon Valley. And a very basic learning that I think we should state in this panel is too many people just ask for money in the nonprofit world without thinking, what can this company bring to the challenge that I'm facing? And it's more than money.
yeah.
Right?
And I think the SDG 17 that you referred to at the beginning, it is actually, I mean, if you to sort of go into the details, it's talking about technology, expertise.
Yeah.
Of course, it's talking about money too, but it is really looking at that much more holistic way of partnering.
That's great. So I would love to bring in some questions about this partnership and learnings, kind of how do we replicate examples like this? I think there's one right here.
I was just curious if you could talk about who you answer to. So, for example, you're on a project in the field, you say we need this much more. You answer, say, to the CEO of Ericsson. Is there any, like, do you take precedence, whatever you need, we give you, or are there situations where there is any conflict? You can talk about it not directly with each other, but just what advice do you give? Because it seems like sometimes there's who's the expert in what problem.
Really quickly, can we just get who you are? I know you were
I'm
just up here.
Diane Brady. Hi.
Thank you.
I can start and then please take it. I mean, so first of all, I would say the missions, and that's of course, what everyone sees, that's the tip of the iceberg, right? So actually the entire year we're training or co-developing, testing, trying technology because this is not the situation you want to fail fast in the field.
Yeah.
But we go on secondment to the UN. So we become part of WFP in this instance. They are driving the mission.
Does that make sense to everyone, or would you want to hear a little bit more on how that works? Do you want to, in terms of working in partnership with WFP, how that categorization works?
So for us, is we have a blanket partnership, partnership agreement with them. It's we have staff on secondment. So we have an emergency. When an emergency is declared, we reach out to our partners, and usually because Ericsson Response Team is on the aircraft, WFP runs aircraft that basically bring humanitarians on the ground, and Ericsson Response is on the first aircraft that go in there with our own equipment. And again, because it's a year-long training about, they train at Ericsson, we train together in Germany as a simulation exercise with other NGOs. Because as you say, we don't want to hit the ground and try things out there. So it takes time. And whenever we have, actually sometimes they even faster, Ericsson is even faster than us putting the appeals out. And I said, I heard there's been a hurricane or there is an earthquake. Do you need any help? And I said, wait, we haven't even deactivated yet.
One step ahead.
There's one step ahead. And I think that's part of that commitment. And the Ericsson Response Team is like, chomping at the bit. They wanted to get to the, and I think that's part of the success.
I'm really glad this point came up about partnering between disasters.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, keeping in mind these are full-time Ericsson employees doing other things at Ericsson who are also doing this work with WFP. And it's how many employees, you said?
It's roughly, at any given time, about 200 that are sort of on the roster.
Okay. And this point, too, that they have to be, I think this came up earlier when we were just discussing, ready, willing, and waiting.
That's right.
And how do you keep them engaged when, their services are not yet needed, but they will be. So I want to bring in one more question. We only have about a minute left, so maybe a question that we can get some rapid fire answers on, if there is one. I see one over here, maybe. Yes. And could you say who you are as well, for those who can't see?
My name is Clayton Banks from Silicon Harlem. So I had a question about how you how you guys identified each other, how you came together, because what I've noticed is there's a lot of nonprofits, right? A lot of nonprofits. The question is, do you, like in Ericsson, do you have to choose one that's like really super big in order to work with them, or could you work with a smaller type nonprofit? I'm not a nonprofit, by the way, but I work with nonprofits that are very much community embedded, not necessarily worldwide.
Right.
And I'm curious how you partner with other people besides just the whole international thing.
Yeah,
Great.
Great question. And just as quickly as I can to say, we're in 180 countries. We're a global organization, so we do in fact look quite often for partners that have that same scale. We think
Yeah.
that that's where we can really meet each other. That said, we do definitely look. I mean, we have smaller partnerships as well, but I think that's where we can bring some value, because that is why we are able to deploy.
Yeah.
Those 200 people are scattered throughout the world, so they're sort of ready to go.
And I might throw out there that coalitions can play a role there too. So like in the disaster response realm, I think of NetHope, where rather than partnering with individual organizations, there might be a coalition to engage with. We're out of time, but I always love to end with any final thoughts or calls to action, especially, again, with the idea of replicating partnerships that work quickly.
Well, I think you heard of some of the things that work, some of the challenges, some of the opportunities, and the World Food Program and the organizations that we represent in responding to humanitarian disasters. We're open for business. We're open for more business, because unfortunately, as the world is going, there is more demand for humanitarian support. And so we are humanitarians, we're not technologists. So if there are technology companies out there who, taking some of the lessons from this experience, are willing to join the coalition, please, I'm here.
Great.
And just to say, I think, we often, and I think especially in the context of these amazing things we've been hearing these past couple of days, thinking always about the new and the latest and the greatest, but also to really understand that there is so much power in what we have today. And going back to this sort of year 2000, a phone call, voice connectivity was a breakthrough intervention. And so, 10 years fast forward, we are able to do so much. We can only anticipate what the next 10 years will bring.
And I'll just quickly tie this back to something we heard earlier. When it comes to how Silicon Valley companies can partner, we talked about this need to shift the mantra from move fast and break things to move purposely and fix things. And I would just throw out there that, the only way that can happen, or the most effective way it can happen, is in partnership with groups that understand that local context. So thank you, and please join me in thanking our speakers.
Thank you.